Awesome.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you all for being here and for our OETA 5 showcase, which is High Five in the Online Classroom. And I'm so excited to have Brian and Amy and Heidi and Douglas and Lee here to be our panel participants. All of them obviously have completed OETA 5 on our High Five in the Online Classroom, and they are willing to share some of the strategies that they actually have implemented and used in their courses. And I want to thank Tanya for being here, and Tanya and I are going to be the facilitators for our workshop today.
Showcase,
excuse me.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's okay.
Okay. If you want to go
Not
next slide.
that fancy of a thing. Let me see. Second. Oh,
Okay.
yay.
All right. If you want to go back. Oh, wait, no. Yes, you go.
All right, so thank you so much to the panel of faculty who've stepped up to share today, and a huge thank you to Jen Anderson for creating, facilitating, and managing High Five for online instruction this year and coordinating this showcase today. Jen asked me to talk briefly about why we're doing a showcase on High Five. So although I could talk for hours on why doing something like this, a showcase, is meaningful, in the spirit of High Five, I decided to write 5 statements that I feel can get us started here. The first is, we know that engaging in professional learning or required training like OETA have little to no impact if we don't make changes to how we teach. Second, we know that making changes to our instructional approaches is not always easy, and we sometimes don't get the results that we expect from those changes. But we do know that when we do try something out and we see an immediate positive impact on our students, it's absolutely rewarding. Third, we know that when we teach or share with others, that we learn and understand what we're teaching even more deeply. And 4, we know that being part of a compassionate, collaborative, and innovative faculty makes us better instructors. And 5, we know it's important to publicly celebrate our hard work together. And that brings us to our showcase today.
All right, so just a quick overview of OETA 5 and the strategies that we use. So a little history really quickly. This was started, High Five actually was started in 2018 with the work of both Tanya and Archana Alwar. And they did it for a few years prior to COVID, more looking at some online, but also really more focused on face-to-face learning in the classroom. So then, as you know, when the pandemic hit, some of these courses were then shifted to look at teaching in the online environment. And then when OETA became a thing last summer, we were asked, the Faculty Commons was asked to create this 4-week course to present these strategies in a really tangible way and practical way for faculty to use them in their classrooms right away when they got them. It is the only course or training in the OETA package that is focused on pedagogy, and we're really proud of the work we've done, and we've gotten some really great feedback, which is always nice and validating. So the strategies that this course is focused on and that we're going to showcase today with our panelists are learning and using students' names and pronouns and building community in the classroom, being transparent in assignment design and providing meaningful feedback to our students, creating a structured online course while also allowing for flexibility throughout the quarter. And then finally, meeting one-on-one with students, monitoring their progress and intervening when necessary. All right, so we're gonna start with our first panelist, which is Brian Cobb in music, and he's gonna share with us his use of video comments for feedback. All right, Brian, you can go ahead and share your screen. So we have to stop sharing.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just getting set here. And if you could confirm that you can see my screen, that would be great. Here we go. Can you see
Yes.
my screen? Okay,
Yes.
awesome. So just going to go back a few. So my contribution here is I am a big fan of Canvas comments through video. And years ago, before I took the High Five class, I would use it, sort of off and on. But I had a colleague over at Highline who did all of his comments through video. And I tried it a few years ago before the pandemic. And it took a long time. I'm not sure if just the upload speed, just wasn't what we currently have it. But I went back to it, and the results I found were really eye-opening once I looked at the feedback and student evaluations. Um, but before I get to that feedback, if you don't know how to access the Canvas um, video comment feature, whenever you have an assignment, a quiz, could be a discussion, where you put your instructor comments, I've circled down here, is a place where you can leave your comment. And there are a few options here. Can you see my cursor, by the way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You can leave just a audio recording if that's works better for you. Like I do those, just so you know, if I'm sitting in my car waiting for my children, just because the visual doesn't look good. But in terms of the video, this is where you access it. And a couple of things I think it takes getting used to is the fact that when you record it, you do have the option of selecting whether to actually use it. You can also change your screen. If you have multiple cameras, you can change your microphone, and you can select whether or not you want to re-record. So what I found is in the early going is that it took a long time to record, get things right. And the more comfortable you get, just like we all dealt with just Zoom recording in general, you get more comfortable and you can get exactly what you need to get across to the student. So it did take time. And if you look at strategically, assignments throughout the quarter, what I found, just thinking about a communication plan, which was covered in OETA 5, is okay, if I'm going to first make a personal connection, I need to make sure that I am ready, have the time carved out to actually go and do these video comments, because it will probably triple the amount of time. But the effect of it, if you're never in the same classroom, if they're not in your live Zoom meeting classroom, that this is one way for you to directly speak to them, right? So the learning of names, pronouns, their likes and dislikes. So when they introduce themselves, I have that up. I can interact with them, and I'd like to share with you some of the responses I've received. So here's a student this year. I'm teaching a history of film music class, and this student had this really well laid out description of who they are. Beyond this, below what you're seeing with the dog there, Daisy, is his list of the favorite films with pictures. So this student is just really excited about being in the class. So my excitement reading, his submission here was to have my video, like we're meeting face to face. So I was able to talk, and one thing we had in common is I grew up with an English Mastiff, and that's exactly what Daisy is, in terms of the dog breed. So there's this connection that was forged right away. And with each of the students, if you go through, many of the students are just happy that I responded to them with the video comments. I mean, I could certainly type it and be engaging, but we all know there's so much lost in the translation of words, capitalize, punctuation, all those things. And they get to know me as someone who, is hopefully not intimidating and inviting, right? That's really what I want to do so I can get the best out of my students. But with each of these, I have about 32 students. If I do a 3-minute video, sometimes it's a minute, I need to also factor in that with the upload, it might be 2 to 4 minutes, right? So if you imagine, if you do this every time, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. But what I did is just, okay, I need to do this for the introduction. I need to do it after their first quiz so they see and I can speak exactly to what I need them to do, whether it's writing about film music, and I can be very particular. With my other classes, like music theory, where there's a lot of problem solving, I used to spend so much time having to write stuff in the margins when instead I could just tell them through the video comments, open up your PDF that you submitted. Let's look together at example 1. This is what you're doing wrong, right? So there's more of me sitting next to them like I would be in an in-person office hour and working with it that way. So just going through, looking at these are quiz comments. So I left, what you're not seeing is the quiz itself, but I left feedback to make sure you do certain things when you're writing about film music. For instance, you need to cite instruments and time codes. And what I received back is the student saying, that's great. Thank you for the feedback. And ever since then, right, they're fine. They probably would have been fine if I wrote it in the comments, but they were sure to message me back sooner, right? So it's very encouraging, and once you get into it, I think it's a lot of fun. And as an instructor, I just feel more connected, with the students than I did before I did this as a sort of regular thing. So as I do these video comments, I'm very focused on the beginning of the quarter. Once they're rolling and they're doing things as I want them to do, then I just sort of wait until the very end of the quarter when they hand in either an exam or a project, and that's where I leave a larger video at the end of the quarter telling them all what they learned, their progress, and just good things about their project. And those videos might be about 4 minutes. And those take some time. So I don't grade all in one night. I do 10, and then I know it's just going to take some extra time. So just to wrap up here, I just want to show you some feedback. So these are from my student evaluations here. And what I've highlighted here are just the comments pertaining to the use of video comments. And I think it's just worth sharing to you all. Students really didn't talk about feedback very much. They would talk about, I'm quick to turn over assignments to get them feedback, but not about the words I had to say to them. And that's what I saw right away, where it's like, I wish all my, professors used this. And then I had some students that would listen to the feedback like a podcast, things that I didn't even know, was a thing actually, because I, sit in front of a laptop and I do it. But it's pretty clear that they like it. It connects them to me, it connects them to the class, and they find it personable. And the takeaways for me, moving just to the next slide, is that it helps connection and it personalizes feedback that speaks directly to them. It's not generic, although I could, do that, of course. But yeah, I'm such a big fan. So that's my pitch to actually use this. And I know if you use it in a way that you feel natural doing it, that you'll see the results, as I did. So yeah, that's my little talk on Canvas video comments.
Yeah, all right, we'll give you a round of applause. Thank you so much, Brian. That was fantastic. You've inspired me to try them out. I'm always nervous to try them, but I love that you shared that feedback that you get from students, that they find it to be really valuable. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and it's,
You don't need to do
it was right away too. That's what, made me want to do more of it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. And next up, we have Amy Swanson. And Amy, question for you. I put all the cool screenshots that you sent me into the PowerPoint. Do you want us to do the PowerPoint, or do you want to share your screen?
It would probably work best if it's not a hassle on your end to share what I sent your way.
Perfect. So we will start.
It doesn't have to be all the things. I can pick and choose. I know I sent you a lot.
No, it's great. One more thing too, I forgot to say this to the panelists. I'm going to give you, because we want to make sure that we get through everyone by 2:50. So I'm going to give you a 5 minute at the 10-minute mark. I'll give you a 5, and that will say that you still have 5 minutes left, and then a 2, and then just start wrapping up if you see the 2, just so we can get through everyone. All right. With no further ado, Amy Swanson with Health and PE. Thanks, Amy.
Perfect. Oh, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me. For those of you who don't know me or we have not had the chance to meet, I am faculty in the Health and Physical Education Department, and we do a lot more than pickleball and weightlifting over here. We have a lot, we do have activity classes, but we do have lecture-based courses, health classes. I teach an anatomical kinesiology class, and today I'll be going over an assignment and the approaches that I use in my wellness coaching class. And for just a little bit of background, my background prior to teaching here at Bellevue College was not in education. It was not in teaching. Exercise science and exercise physiology, so very much a human movement laboratory-based individual. And so coming into the college, I had a lot of my field-based experience, right, as so much of us do, all the technical aspects, but not a lot of teaching design and really knowing how to maximize my clarity and my effectiveness. And throughout the tenure process, I was getting a lot of feedback on things that were working well for students and things that were not working well for students. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Hillary Clinton when she says, "Take criticism seriously, but not personally." And so for many years, I was getting a lot of good feedback about honestly, the lack of clarity in my assignments. And it was hard to digest, but as I started to get into the faculty commons a lot more and learn about what they had to offer, I found specifically that tilting assignments and various methods of learning students' names helps not only, like Brian says, build that community, that sense of community in the classroom, but also increase transparency. And those two things together help to build more equity, at least in my opinion, more equitable learning in the classroom. So for me, going from prior to the pandemic, 100% in person, in lecture, I would have students break off into groups and we'd get to know each other. And so I really started to crave that same closeness in the online format. So, and I can't take full credit for this assignment. Actually, I learned about this approach to learning names from Miranda Cato, who was generous enough to help cover my class while I was on maternity leave during a pandemic. So she helped introduce me to this assignment, and I've refined it over the last couple of years. So the story of my name, I really love because it's an icebreaker activity that helps to build community and awareness among the students of different backgrounds, cultures, identities, and histories of people's names. So what I have students do is we use Flipgrid, which you can access and embed within Canvas itself. And students go in and they can record themselves actually speaking about the origins and the history of where their name comes from. And what I have found that students really enjoy is just getting the chance to share about themselves and the connection that they have to their name and their families. And oftentimes has to do with deep familial roots, and sometimes they're just really neat stories. And I've had multiple students tell me how much they enjoyed hearing where other students' names came from. So what I like about this activity is that it's not just a hi, introduce yourself on a discussion board, right? The Flipgrid, if any of you have used it before, it's actually like a collage of videos, and students will oftentimes use their phone, and they'll speak into their phone, they'll record for up to 2 minutes, and then they post the video. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. And so this is just a screenshot of where this was utilized this quarter in my wellness coaching class. And so students are also required to go through and comment on 2 students' videos. And I was speaking to a student who I also have in person as well as in this online class, and they said how much they appreciated learning about the other students and made them feel more connected. And then later on in the quarter, when they start to do group projects, they feel like they already know each other. There's that sense of community that's already being built. So I don't recommend doing this like necessarily like as a first day of class, just because sometimes students need this to or need a little bit of time to get into the class and kind of see the expectations. I usually have this like within the second week, so students have a chance to sort of get the sense of what's going on in the class. So this isn't like a first day, first assignment sort of thing. But yeah, so this is an activity that I've moved away from just the discussion board and made it more interactive. All right, yes, my tilting a complex assignment. So as I said, with my background not being within teaching, I found it really important to really address what I felt was an area of weakness for me, to be honest, as an instructor. And so what I have found to be the most helpful with tilting the assignment is also realizing, while there's, the framework of a purpose and tasks and what they need to submit, there's some fluidity within that tilting framework. And I find that I sometimes will change that a little bit from assignment to assignment. No matter what, it still has these like foundational bones that I build off of. If anybody is not implementing this and you do, I would just say, spend a lot of time on the purpose. I actually found, to be very honest, that as I went through and started to write the purpose of some of my assignments, I realized they were not good assignments. And there was not a good purpose. I know, sorry, Jen, I don't know if that's what you want to hear, but I realized that, and maybe years ago it worked in an in-person setting, and novice instructor Amy thought it was a really good assignment. And as I started going through and reevaluating the clarity and the accessibility and the purpose, I've actually deleted more assignments than I have kind of gone in and refined them, because once I start with the purpose, I realize it's it's not there. So that's actually improved my teaching and my course clarity as I have reevaluated the true purpose of the assignment. And so as you can see here, this really helped me get in my mind, you know, the tasks and the steps. So there was an individual task and a team task. And prior to tilting this assignment, it was a mess. Students were confused. I mean, I was getting so many emails, and I told myself, if I have tilted this successfully, I will maybe get no emails clarifying the purpose of this assignment. And so far this quarter, there's been 0. Yes, which obviously is not my goal. I want students to reach out to me, but I felt like that was a good benchmark, because previously this was getting emails and office hours and just like, what is this assignment? So what I have heard from a student, again, I have the student in this class and then in person, she said, Professor Amy, I love how your assignment is laid out. It's like a checklist. I go through bit by bit. I don't feel stressed. I don't feel overwhelmed, and I don't feel like I'm in the dark. So to me, right, that removes a barrier for the students. They have a very clear checklist to work off of, and they're going into the assignment open and ready to learn and not feeling stressed out. And that's ultimately how I want the students to engage with the content. I include the rubric. This is something that I was, you know, working, this is a very basic rubric, during the OETA 5, just going through, making sure that there's very clearly defined tasks and a rubric. And like Brian said about the video comments, it takes more time to do this kind of stuff, but the payoff that I'm seeing through student learning, meeting the outcomes, and then just equitable learning is a major bonus to implementing some of these concepts. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you, Amy. Oh, whoops, sorry. One more. There was one more slide. Sorry.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, that's okay. And yes, so I think another thing that I learned about as well in this class was timely feedback and ensuring that you're giving meaningful feedback. So the tilted assignments help to provide that really clear framework. And then again, to Brian, I think explained this really beautifully, is no matter the kind of feedback you're giving, the timeliness builds that well-rounded sense of community, because the students aren't left hanging and feeling like you're disengaged. And again, that was one of the primary takeaways that I got from this learning, was how do we build community, and what are the points of intervention that we can do that. And I find that the timely feedback, especially in an online asynchronous, is absolutely important, and not just a couple sentences, but like some robust feedback.
All right, fantastic.
So meaningful. Thank you so much for putting it together. And I mean, I had so much fun learning.
Good. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I love that part of tilting is going through your assignments and being like, gosh, this doesn't really fit. Why was I just doing it for work or whatever? So I really appreciate, that you shared that. Awesome. Good. Thank you so much. All right. So next up we have Heidi Richter, and she's here in person. So we will have her present. Yes.
I am. Can you hear me if I speak from here? Perfect. I'm going to follow up on what Amy said, and how when we start out teaching, that the things that we do are things we maybe saw and we thought they worked okay, until we realized that they really weren't working okay. I don't have I didn't bring slides, so you just get me. So I wanted to share 2 major things that I do to build community and to check in on students. The first one, in my online classes for the get to know each other assignment, I have a discussion board like many of us do, and I started doing 2 truths and a lie. And I got this idea originally from Sarah Gardner, and I decided to just give it a try. And it is amazing the kinds of things that you learn about students just from asking 2 truths and a lie. And then students have to guess what's true, what's a lie. And it starts some really interesting conversations, such as, I really want this one to be true, but I really don't think it is. And that's been very successful for getting people chatting. I find it very challenging to have authentic discussion assignments, and those tend to be more authentic. In the real classroom, I wanted to share that I do a get to know each other activity the first day that allows me to learn the student names. And if anybody wants a copy of it, I have some here and I'm happy to send it to anybody. But I actually talk to all the students and have them, I have a list of qualifications, qualities, things about students. And it might be, likes to run, has coffee in the morning, has an unusual pet. They're all really random things. Has been to a Sounders game in the last year, knows CPR, and every student in the classroom has to speak to every other student in the classroom and me. And they introduce themselves. So it's an opportunity to learn what name they use without directly asking what name they use. And you learn really, really interesting things about the students. Like I can tell you who raises white peacocks to sell. I can still tell you that. I know who plays tennis. I know who's a paramedic, right? Like they share with you what they want. And then at the end of meeting everybody, they have to introduce somebody and we go around the room. And it has been the best thing that I have done for building community in my classroom, like bar none, because at the end of that, nobody's a stranger. They've all spoken to each other and me, and they will seek out their people based on who plays Pokemon or who plays Dungeons and Dragons. And I really recommend it. Take the 45 minutes to do that activity. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is I'm in biology, and there are a few of us who are working on metacognition with our students. And what I do for metacognition is a start of quarter reflection and a mid-quarter reflection with all of my classes. And in the start of quarter reflection, I have students look at the course outcomes and they tell me which one are they most interested in and why, which one do they already know the most about and why, and which one are they most interested in learning about and why. So make sure that they see the course outcomes, first of all, but also that they now are making a connection to what they're going to be learning in the class. Then I ask them, what is their desired grade in the course? Which for almost everybody, of course, the answer is A, right? And then what are their learning strategies for accomplishing that grade? So recognizing that they're the ones who have to do the work. And then a big piece I've been working with them on is the next question asks, how are you going to communicate what you learned? Because they think that studying, and that's quite common answer is, I'm going to study. And so I get into that, like, what does studying look like to you? What does that mean to you? Just studying isn't enough. And then how are you going to communicate that information? And the students, they'll say, well, I'm going to do really well on the exams. Like, but no, the only way you're going to do well on the exam is if you communicate what you know. So what specifically do I need, or any instructor, what do we need to see from you in order for you to earn that higher grade? So then they start getting into, I need to give specific examples, details, link it back to the textbook, make outside connections, those kinds of things. Because they don't realize, right? They don't know necessarily what they need to do. And then online, I also ask them, what do they need to do to make sure they're successful in the online learning environment? What did they learn from previous classes? So things like put their phones away, make sure they're engaged in the course. And what additional resources do they need to be successful? So this is often where I learn about students like, I'm working 3 jobs and I just don't have time. And then I can say, okay, here's financial aid. I'm struggling with mental health issues is a really common one. So then I'll link them to the counseling center. Other times it's really specific things like, I don't know what bus to take to get to campus, and I'll find that out for them. Okay. So they do that in the second week of the quarter. I don't do it the first week because there's still too much turnover in the first week. So I do it in the second week. And then in week 5, after they've had their first exam, I do a mid-quarter reflection. And it has similar questions, but it's, what's your current grade in the class? what have you been doing to earn the grade that you have now? And I very much use the language earn your grade, right? And then what's your goal grade? What do you need to change in order to earn that goal grade? So it makes them really go back and look and say, hang on a second, I have a D, I really want an A. What do I need to do? Usually they say go to office hours. Very rarely do they actually follow through, but that's the number one answer is I'm going to go to office hours more. And then later I can say, but you didn't go to office hours. And then again, what additional supports do you need to be successful? Because now they're like, oh, I realized I don't know how to take notes. And then I can give them information on different note-taking strategies. And for each of those, I respond individually to every student and provide them suggestions, feedback, support, and encouragement. And they seem to like that check-in and the personal attention that they get from them.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Heidi. And what I love, Heidi, is the personal accountability, but also by you doing this, it's showing that you care, right? You care, you're monitoring their progress through the quarter, but also allowing for that personal responsibility piece too for individual students. So thank you very much for sharing this. All right. So next up, we have Douglas Cole, and he is online. Yes, thank you, Douglas, for joining us. Oh, now I need to spotlight you. Hold on one second. Spotlight.
While you're working on that, Jen, Heidi, was this part of your communication plan that you
Yes.
did? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yes.
And I just implemented it during the pandemic,
Yeah.
teaching online.
Yeah.
check it.
That's awesome. Awesome.
But now I do it in my in-person classes too.
All right. Well, Douglas, thank you again for joining us. And so you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jen, for your help during the OEAT. Wait, how am I getting?
That thing.
Whatever that
How do those letters go again? OETA.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were my peer partner, as I recall.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too. I want to talk about that. Now, what I'm getting though is that the primary purpose of this particular meeting is the elements of the tilt qualities that we talked about in your course, the 5, and how we're using them, how it's beneficial, and bring that to the attention of the folks here, right? Yeah, and so I mean that class was really about refining for teaching online, right?
It was.
But a lot of that stuff is useful, obviously, for the face-to-face classes too. And so I think there's overlap worth looking at. But one thing I noticed, especially about that course 5, what was sort of meaningful to me about it that I care for, absolutely what you say. You learn something, if you don't use it, it sort of fades away. And there's stuff in that OETA course. I knew, a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of us took it and we knew it, but we don't do it. Because a lot of that, if you guys weren't paying attention or didn't notice, a lot of it's coming out of a lot of years of assessment work. A lot of the framework of that is coming out of assessment work, especially the transparency and the clarity in the outcome language in assignments. And so I've been doing that for a lot of years, of course. I was on various assessment committees, in fact. And so that, get the outcomes clear for the institution, and then clarify how they relate to the ones for the program, and then clarify how they go to the class, and then they get into the assignment, and they get down to the rubric. And so I've been doing a lot of that, but absolutely, I get lazy. After a couple of quarters, I make a new assignment. I kind of, I forget to put that language from the syllabus or, the program, outcome stuff into the assignment. So that reminder is good, that whole sort of, and that's one thing I do like about assessment, because I think there are other problematic things about it due to, where it came from, No Child Left Behind. It's a slight, stick instead of a motivation for funding and set. Anyway, we won't talk about that. I love that it does that. The transparency element, I think, is the most important part for me, which is, yes, I love that. You have language that's clear in your syllabus that relates clearly to the assignment. The students feel like they know why. And Amy, you talked about this a little bit too. There's no confusion, no working in the dark. I feel like I understand based from the moment I read your syllabus to the moment I read your comments on my paper. I feel like there's like this vocabulary I'm learning, it's developing, it's consistent. So actually, one of the things I didn't talk about this in my course with you, but I like to, one of the first things I have students do in an online class is read the syllabus. And what they do is I create assignments called a check-in syllabus review. They read the syllabus and their job is to write one question, one comment based on what they read, and then they upload it. Two things it does is it makes sure they read it, because like we talk about the syllabus being a form of a contract, and so they have to witness and read and understand the language of it. And of course, that's the scope of the course they're going to take. And then it does another thing, which is gives me a chance to see what kind of programs they're using when they upload assignments, so I can kind of troubleshoot that before a real assignment comes along. Because people will upload things in OETA or various programs that won't open in Canvas, and so I can learn that. Then I can address all the questions about the syllabus and do that. Now, that's a kind of assessment oriented sort of way of doing it too, because then, we talk about the outcomes. And one of the things I've been doing a lot with the writing class, I teach English, as I think I may have mentioned, a lot of composition classes, is in terms of transparency too, is to talk to them about how assignments, because I always try to say, I'm teaching you sort of like with feet in two different camps. One is very much the institution that we're in, the practicality of helping you navigate it and get better grades and go into the next class and succeed and express yourself in your language in a way that feels, like you're getting the best out of your language to get the best grade you can. Because I know those are practical concerns students have. But the other is I'm always trying to nudge students to get the personal victory in terms of their writing. I love what I wrote. I want to keep it even when the degree is done, something like that. And so whenever I talk to them about the assignments that we're working on, whether we're reading, stuff outside of the class, or whether we're reading essays by professional writers or doing peer reviews, is that notion like, okay, what are you looking at that's useful for you in terms of our outcomes we've talked about for the institution, and then what are the private victories you get out of, stuff like that. Anyway, the other thing I do in terms of one of the things, Jen, you wanted me to address, I said I would, was the sort of community also, and maintaining that. The syllabus review is one. Face-to-face courses I love. This is one, I don't know if any of you have tried this before. I like it. It's called the name around, or the where you have people sit they can be in a circle. It doesn't have to be what the first person says his or her name, and now you can add in which sort of pronouns they wish as well. Say their name, then the person next to him would say that person's name, then their name and pronouns, and then you work your way. So each person has to add another name to their list of people. And so the thing that I find that works for that is it helps me learn their names quickly. Best thing I notice is when students know their name, when you can address them directly, suddenly they know they're seen and they can't get away. And then they learn each other's names too swiftly. That particular exercise is really effective in getting those both to happen, because then they see each other in the hallway and they spot each other, and that again integrates and creates community. And so that exercise, and I go last. I always make sure I'm last, so I got to say everybody's name. But by that time, we've heard everybody's name quite a bit. That's a really cool exercise. I don't know if there's a name for it. I don't remember where I got it, but I'm using it, especially for face-to-face. Online, you're all labeled. I can see all your names. We don't need to do that as much. But online or in the class, the other thing I like to do is use a lot of peer groups. Brian, you were talking a little bit about that too. I think Amy was too. And in the peer groups, mix them up. Change them from time to time. Every new peer group. And again, in terms of the tilt transparency purpose of that, and again, I like that about this tilt way of thinking, is to reflect on why I am doing it too. And then when I figure that out, express it to the students, and they feel like, okay, there's real thought going behind it. This isn't just busy work. So I change their peer review personnel so that they can get different perspectives on their writing, see different kinds of writing, and of course then they are working with different people. There's more diversity in terms of who they're working with, the feedback they're getting, that sort of thing. And that can be also tied back into outcomes of the course as well, collaborative learning, whether, all the various things. And so I try to keep mindful of walking those back, whatever I'm talking about, whether it's the personal or the institutional success goal that you've got on this assignment, or why we're shifting, members in a peer group, or, I try to kind of remember to have my own list or make clear, as well as the language of the assignment talking about it, me reinforcing, saying it loud verbally. Yeah, you can see how this ties into what we're trying to do for the class as a whole, whether it's communication, whether it's information literacy and those sorts of things. I don't know. I feel like I'm running out of time here, and I don't go over, and I hope I got to the things I wanted to tell you about. Oh, yeah. The last thing is I like to use the discussion in the Canvas to do the peer review. And then I'll create them for them. And so they'll be in group 5 and they'll have their discussions ready to go. And that's where they go and they can do all that peer reviewing in that space. I like to kind of keep that discreet for that too. Anyway, that's about what I've got to offer. Thank you, Jen, for giving me the chance to share.
Great. All right. Thank you, Douglas.
All right, everybody.
I love that you weaved the transparency and the importance of being transparent and the importance of that purpose, not just in assignments, but also activities we're doing in class and so forth. I appreciate that you highlighted that. So thank you very much. All right. Last but not least, we have Lou from Communication Studies in my office mate. So thank you. And she's going to go ahead and share. And I'm going to spotlight you. Oh, wait, there you are.
Are you going to?
I am. I'm going to spotlight you. Replace spotlight. There you go. All right.
Hi, everybody. I really enjoyed today's presentation and actually got carried away and didn't realize that it is now my turn. And with all the fabulous tips already shared, and I hope I can still add on to the wonderful ideas that we learned today. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Lee. I'm Communication Studies faculty member. I'm office mate with Jen. I'm also the week's study abroad coordinator. So I do study abroad, and this is kind of relevant because one of the examples I'm going to share later is about traveling. I guess I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you that particular assignment. But I think my highlight for today's sharing is providing feedback and also effectively monitoring students' progress. So I want to maybe plant some suspension. The feedback, I think one thing I do want to highlight in terms of how I provide feedback is I actually provide some feedback even prior to submission of assignments. So before students submit assignments, and I want to provide some feedback already. Those are the pain points I have learned over the years. So I provide those in advance. For monitoring students' progress, and here's the suspension, and make sure to ask me in the end. I have a groundbreaking discovery when it comes to monitoring students' success, but I'm not going to say it right now. Remember to ask me in the end. Okay, so go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so this is the assignment that I hope to showcase that kind of explain further of what I meant by sharing feedback even prior to students' submission of their assignments. And I think I share some of the concern that Amy said earlier about trying to improve the clarity and transparency. It has been my focus as well as I was going through my tenure process, because that's one of the highlights among all the feedbacks that I received from students and other colleagues who review my syllabus as well as sitting into my classes for observation. So it has been my focus, and I enjoyed learning about tilting the assignment because it's benefiting students as well as myself. It's a meaningful process reflecting upon the validity and the usefulness of the assignment. And me too actually ended up deleting some of those assignments. So far for this graded discussion, I used to have much more than what I have for now in my intercultural communication class. I used to have weekly discussion. And for now, I only have 3 discussions. So cutting down from almost 10 discussions to 3. I combined some of those into one so that it does not take that much of students' time addressing those same list of learning outcomes. So I'm feeling successful and effective because I saved the time for students. So I'll just quickly go over this assignment. It's about traveling, and it's about my past traveling experience to the Scandinavian, and I highlighted 2 particular locations. The first is Castle of Finland, and the other is a waterfront walk in Copenhagen. So in terms of task, and I have those in the accordion, and I'll go ahead and open those. The first one is understanding the cases. For those locations, I recorded the virtual visit in Google Earth. So I embedded some of those pictures. I'm not going to play those videos right now, but if you can see in the small window, I have myself, of course, in the lower right corner, talking about those locations and my experience of visiting those. And the main screen would be the Google Earth flying over. We make stops at different locations. And then the upper right corner, if you can see a small window, I embedded the pictures I took while I am visiting that location. So I kind of share my imageries as well as the Google Earth flying over. So this is this video for Castle of Finland. If we have time later on today, I'd be more than happy to show you this video. And then this is the waterfront walk in Copenhagen. So I kind of talked about the library, the Royal Library in Denmark, and the bridge in front of it, which was a design of Olaf Larsen, and how the library connect to the past and the future, and a bridge that was adjacent to this Olaf Larsen's Circle Light Bridge. And so I talked about several of those, but I do not make conclusion because the goal is for students to go through the virtual tour and then come up with their own conclusion evaluating this traveling experience. And then the last is a very quick TED Talk. So that's understanding the case. And then I have writing up discussion posting. I'll quickly show you that. And you can see I asked for a lot of things. And I think this is, I want to say, students appreciate those questions. Sometimes they don't know how to get started. So being detailed is a plus side, but I do realize that students are not used to go through a discussion posting prompt with so many questions, and sometimes they just shut down, didn't want to go through the assignment at all. So I recognize those as a drawback as well. But the one thing I do want to share with you, and this goes back to what I said earlier, of sharing feedback even prior to students submitting their own discussion posting, is really the sample posting that I want to share. And this is number 3 over here. I share a sample posting for students to look at. For analytical writing, I think this is okay because I'm not teaching creative writing. So sharing a sample does provide a sense of structure, as well as for students who are going into this class with a multilingual background, or they receive their first writing class not in the US setting. This is very supportive of their learning because they did not know what it means to come up with a piece of analytical writing in our academic tradition at all. So I provide a sample like this. But the feedback that I keep talking about is what's included in those encased words. So I first tell them that if you hover over and you can see the pop-up content, like that, and it will give you additional curated tips. So over here we have an in-text citation. And this is a pain point. Previously, students had no idea what it means to provide in-text citation, even though we always provide Purdue or OUT link here and there, and we keep saying to students that you are not doing it right, here's how you're doing it correctly. For the next assignment received, it is still not right. So I begin to provide something like that in a text and providing, even if you could say there's a thing called pre-feedback. So I do something like that, and miraculously, after I provided this, nobody, if they try this out, nobody is making any additional mistakes, and nobody's asking me additional questions about what do you mean of citations. I'm so worried, and no questions. And like Amy said earlier, it's not our goal that we reduce the email traffic. Well, I kind of want to say that it does benefit the teaching and learning process, because I save time and students save time, and we get to talk about more sophisticated conversations, and we can have more intellectually challenging back and forth about what we really want to talk about. But citation format is something that I feel we couldn't just skip, because this earned trust and attention for students writing in academic setting. And we want this happen to students. So we couldn't bypass that. But here's one way that I've learned that's really beneficial for students learning, and have more of those. And obviously I have used the same assignment over and over again. And this is one pain point I have learned, that students do struggle with this particular notion. So I planted in this. And it's my suspicion that they do go over those additional content because it's reflected in their assignment. So this is the feedback even prior to their submitting their assignment. And then the rest will be just the regular, expectations, whatnot. But I want to quickly show you the first one from Mia. Mia, clearly, she studied the assignment as well as, maybe the sample, and she probably tapped on those additional things. So it's reflected in her response. And Mia is also an international student. So I think this is a particularly supportive for her, and because she probably would find an example particularly helpful. I remember myself going through the graduate school, as an international student, and I would really have appreciated if there were a sample provided, before I submit my assignment. So that's that. And then I want to quickly show you, I think if I go here. So this is Mia's assignment, and this is in the grade, in a speed grader. The rubric is previously I shared the rubric with the students and asking them if they have any questions about the rubric. So they went through the rubric a week ago. And I also remember to ask them if you, previously have received helpful feedback from your other writing instructors. I want to know about that. And if you want me to pay particular attention of your writing anyway, I want to know about that. Now try to do that. So students receive extra credit if they tell me in advance. When I'm doing grading, I have double screen open on both monitors, and I will go over what they want to hear, what will be the area they want me to pay attention to in particular. And then I kind of continue from the previous instructor feedback they received and now say, I agree with the previous instructor, or I think you've made significant improvement from the last time you received that particular feedback. So I think this is more contextualized in their personal journey. And I also receive students' evaluation to say that the feedback is meaningful. So kind of going back to what many of us previously said about how feedback can be personalized and contextualized. Does anybody remember what I said earlier about the suspension? The groundbreaking discovery, remember? The groundbreaking discovery I have discovered is that I can provide much more meaningful feedback if I have more time. And I feel,
Sorry.
I feel, the way I have provided, in the sample posting, the pop-up content, it saved the time for me significantly. So we all designed the learning, Canvas learning platform. Oftentimes we tend to forget about how we ourselves are a user of the system that we're designing. So I feel at the end of the day, if I successfully optimize the learning system, I save time, and the students, end up benefiting from this additional time because I get to talk to them in a more meaningful way. So that's my part.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Great feedback. Lee taught me how to do those little pop-up things, and I love it. It's very cool. So, yes. All right, well, that is the end of our panel in terms of the different showcases and the different strategies that were being shared. So we have a few minutes, about 10 to 15 minutes for questions if people have any questions that they want to ask. I know Amy and Brian are here. They may have to leave. I know they have places that they have to go. And Lee's here, and Tanya and I are here, and Douglas is also here. So I think maybe just Heidi had to leave so far. So any questions? You can type them in the chat, or you can unmute and I'll stop showcasing. I'll remove your spot.
Can panelists ask questions?
Definitely.
Amy, I was wondering, the flip grid that you use, is that an app in Canvas, or is that something that's outside?
I believe, well, initially I thought it was outside, and I went to go link it through Canvas. And I do believe there is like an enable flip grid in the navigation section. However, I was having some interface issues with that, Brian. So what I ended up doing is removing permissions for Canvas to do it. So I simply embedded the link within the assignment, if that makes sense. And I believe through the college, we have an institutional account. So it talks to our Outlook email. It's recognized as a Bellevue College partner. And I'm not sure if anyone else can speak to that, but yeah. Yeah,
it's really great. I'm going to figure out how to use it. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's good. And I even, for that story of my name, I even submitted one as the instructor, and the students really seemed to enjoy, similar to your video comments, they really enjoyed having me chime into an assignment and share something. I just need to figure out more ways to use Flipgrid, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great, good question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, for me, it was interesting to hear folks talk about what they do in their on-ground classes versus online. And it does feel like as technology is catching up a bit, that some of these things that we love to do face-to-face are maybe getting more doable in online settings. It's just a matter of, like Amy was just saying with Flipgrid, maybe figuring it out, like, seeing how it works best in the online classroom to do X, Y, and Z, experimenting with it. Because a lot of the things that people were sharing that they do on ground, it's like, oh shoot, wouldn't it be amazing if we could replicate that kind of thing online? And my guess is there are ways that we could, but we haven't quite figured out how to use technology in that way, or if we're teaching just an asynchronous online course, how can we get better collaborations amongst our students? Those are just, it's not insightful, it's just like, yeah, how can we replicate that community feeling that a lot of us are able to do really nicely in our on-ground classes? Because we know it's important for all of us. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Anything else? All right. Well, I just want to again give a shout out and such a huge thank you to Brian and Amy and Douglas and Heidi and Lee for being willing participants on this panel. And I really too want to thank everyone that so far, I think we've had over 270 people complete OETA 5. And Tanya and I are currently in the process of taking what you've done on those Google Docs. Remember you said either helping to learn names or build community. And we're collating that into one document that we're going to share on the Faculty Commons website. So you will be able to go back and see all the different great ideas that people have shared, whether it's questions they ask on those introductory posts or using video and all the great stuff that you shared and that other participants have shared as well. So yeah, thank you for your time. Go enjoy the sunshine. It's beautiful. And we'll see you all later.